Thank you so much for watching my YouTube channel. We're finishing our series on friendship with God. And we've been looking at friendship with God from the verse in Exodus 33:11 that says, God spoke with Moses face to face as a man speaks with a friend. And over the course of this series, what we've done is we've looked at maybe some of the dark things we need to get rid of, because developing a friendship with God is a bit of a journey. And step one is, putting into the light some of the stuff in our hearts that would be no bueno. Then we also looked at the importance of giving God attention, that Moses turned aside when he saw the burning bush. And when God had Moses' attention, he began to speak with him. Then we looked last week at the need for time. And we looked at Moses' life, the 40-year increments of his life. And they were all about time. But today I want to look at this last part, and I really love this. It's basically Exodus 33. And in Exodus 33, this is where and I've said it throughout the whole series, verse 11, the Lord used to speak to Moses face to face as a man speaks with his friend. But when I really love and think about this chapter, one of the things that stands out to me is it's kind of the culmination. It's the culmination of Moses' friendship relationship with God. And when you read this chapter, you see that Moses, by this point, Moses had heavy, heavy responsibility. He's led the Israelites out of slavery, past the Red Sea, and this is shortly after Mount Sinai. And now everybody's coming to him with responsibilities and how do we do this? He's got oversight for over 1 million people. You talk about, and they're in the desert, so food and water and lodging. This is, this is a heavy, heavy, heavy responsibility. And, granted, he had some structure and some administrative supports put in place and stuff, somewhat. But I find this interesting because it says in verse 9, Exodus 33, verse 9, it says, whenever Moses entered the tent, the pillar of cloud would descend and stand at the entrance of the tent of the Lord, and the Lord would speak to Moses. And here's what happened. Moses, in the midst of living in this camp with over 1 million Israelites, it said that he pitched a tent outside of the camp. And this was called the tent of meeting. And this was like his own personal sanctuary, if you will, where he would go and have like a retreat from all of the demands, expectations, hey, Moses, fix question, all that stuff. He would go outside of the camp and go into this tent of meeting. And when he went into the tent of meeting, it says the pillar of cloud came down over the tent, and the Israelites stood, and they would recognize that Moses was communing, having fellowship, whatever you want to say, with God. And he would pull away. He would intentionally take a pause from all the busyness, the activities, the responsibilities, the demands the pressures that were on him. He would intentionally pause, and he would say, sorry, I just need to have a break. And he would go out to his tent and meet with God. And that's the context where it says God would speak with Moses face to face as a man speaks with his friend. And even at one point, Moses says to God, hey, I want to see your face. And God says, I can't do that. I'll hide you in the cleft of the rock and you can see my backside. Really, I think that's really powerful that Moses had such an intimate connection with God. And it's like this culmination description of this friendship that Moses had. But remember, it was cultivated. It was cultivated over time. And the ingredients that we've talked about, I think they're important for you, for me as well. And let's never think that, okay, well, I crossed that hurdle and I don't have to go back and do that again. We talked about the wilderness when Moses was on the backside of the wilderness for 40 years. There are seasons in your life where you go back into a wilderness and you're like, ugh, I've been down this road. I don't want to do it again. But no matter what the season is in your life, no matter what murkiness may come up in your heart. Sometimes we think we deal with stuff and then it comes in, you're like, oh, I thought that was, but you're like, no, here we are. Let's go over this again. And let's present ourselves in friendship with God consistently and with our attention, with our time. And let's from time to time make some getaways, make some retreats, if you will, with God. But let's always keep at the front and center of why we do what we do is we're not looking for God's hand, but we're looking for God's face. It's not just what we can get out of God, but rather how we can connect with God in friendship, in cooperation, in fellowship, in communion, and intimacy with God. Man, I'd love that on my tombstone. She was God's friend. God was Sarah's friend. Now, I would think that would be one of the best things somebody could write for an epigraph, is that I was friends with God and God was friends with me. So I just encourage you, no matter what, let's make the intentional goal and pursuit that we keep ourselves as friends and developing that friendship with God. So thank you so much for watching. We'll start a new series next week. It'll be super great, but I'd love to get your feedback. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Leave some comments. That'd be great if you have suggestions. Of course, I love that. Thank you for subscribing. Of course, really appreciate that. Hit the bell so you can get notifications. And last but not least, we have these phenomenal jokes that you love. I know you love them. So my friend just told me this, and I'm going to tell it to you. It's a little bit similar to last week's, but I think it's actually better than last week. So there was a guy, he got fired from the M&M factory because he kept throwing out the W's. I know. Thanks so much for watching. Catch you next week.